Hey everyone, and welcome back to Just Finished Coding. I'm Sriram, and this video is part 3 where we make the Chrome Dino game on Scratch. If you haven't watched parts 1 and 2, then you can click on the card up here. So far we have programmed the jumping mechanism and the obstacle movement. In this video, I will teach you how you can make the game more realistic with the dirt moving on the ground and also by adding a scoring system. Without further ado, let's jump right into the code. First, you will need to go to the dirt sprite. All the clones are perfectly set up during the init message and are distinguished based on the clone variable. So, after the tick message is received, we first check if the obstacle is a clone or not. If yes, then we check if the X position is less than -210. In most cases, this will be false as the dirt will be on the right. Thus, in these cases, we just change X by the X velocity to move the dirt leftward. Great. This will go on until the X position is less than -210, in which case we'd want to remove the dirt particle and create a corresponding clone all the way to the right. For this, first go to the back layer, then go to X 210 plus a random value from 4 to 16 and Y a random value from -27 to -33. This is similar to how we created our clones initially, and the logic should be pretty self-explanatory. After this, we will switch to a random costume, then create a clone, and finally delete that particular clone that we were working on. Test this out and you should have the dirt move on the ground along with the obstacles. This looks great, and it actually appears as if the dino is running. It's time to move on to the scoring system. Go to the score sprite and here create a variable called place for this sprite only. For the score sprite, we will start with the init numbers message itself. After the game ends and we wish to restart, we will be broadcasting the init and start game messages. This is the reason that we have the additional init numbers message in the first place. We would not want to delete and create the clones after init for a number of sprites, specifically the score and high score. This sprite has 10 costumes, with each costume being a digit from 0 to 9. Essentially, the purpose of the sprite is to control the scoring of the game and also to display it graphically for the player to see. Okay, within a repeat 1, we will delete the existing clones. After this, hide and set the size to 70%. Set place to 1, and after this, we will need 5 clones with the place variable performing the role of being able to distinguish them. At the end, each clone will have its place variable from 1 to 5, with the sprite itself having its variable set to 6. Alright, let's create a variable called score for this sprite only. After init, set the score variable to 0. That's it for the init message, and now let's program the main game ticks. First, we check if the place is not 6. If this is false, then it means that we are dealing with the sprite. Here, we would just want to increase the score, but in accordance to how far into the level the player is. We can just increase the score by the rounded value of the absolute value of the X velocity divided by 8. Pretty simple, and this will result in our score being accurate. Now we have to position the clones of the score to align properly from left to right. At the start, show, then go to Y130, and for X, 155 minus place -1 multiplied by 12. This may seem a bit confusing, but it's fairly simple to understand. The first clone, which has a place of 1, will be fixed to an X position of 155, and each succeeding clone will be to its left by 12 pixels. After this, we have to actually display the scores. What I do a lot of times is hide the numbers that are not relevant. For example, if the score is 150, then we will only need 3 clones and the last 2 can remain hidden. But in this case, we'd want the clones shown but display them to 0. It's a slight difference, and you'll see how we can deal with this particular case. Moving on, check if the place is less than the length of score plus 1. This is the check for whether the clone is necessary. Let's take an example and work from there. Suppose the score was 150. The length of the score is 3 So we will need the clones having places 1, 2 and 3 to display the number. That is why we add the +1 in the if condition. We need all the places which are less than the length of score, and we also need the place which is equal to the length of score. This should explain the logic of this condition. If this is false, it just means that the clone is unnecessary, but rather than hiding it, we will just switch the costume to 0. Fairly straightforward, and for the true condition, just switch the costume to letter, length of score, +1 minus place of score. Again, this might not make sense at first, but it should get clear with my explanation. Keep in mind that the clone with place 1 should switch its costume to the last letter of score. In a sense, we're reversing through the score digits. The first clone takes the last digit, the second clone takes the second last digit, and so on. The last digit is the length of score, and we add 1 and subtract the place value to get the costume for each individual clone. Well, that is pretty much it. Test the code and you should have the score adjust perfectly. What's additionally great is that the score actually stops incrementing when the game ends. With that said, thanks for watching. Make sure you leave a like if this helped you out, and until next time, peace out.